Welcome to the Exceptionally Irresistible Show, featuring conversations with people who have demonstrated exceptional success in their lives and who have some irresistible qualities worth learning from. Come learn how others have created an exceptionally irresistible life. You too can live an extraordinary life, both personally and professionally. So sit back, relax, grab your favorite beverage, and enjoy the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of the Exceptionally Irresistible Show. We are super excited to bring this whole other show. As you've heard from the intro last week, we are going to be highlighting the best of the best incredible stories that we have for you. These are individuals who either are demonstrating something exceptionally irresistible in their life or who teach something exceptionally irresistible in their career, in their professions. And today, our very first guest really demonstrates both. And he is one of the men that really has transformed my life and really has brought so much value, not only to me, but to many others. He's known as the Go Giver, the co author of the Go Giver series. Without further ado, Bob Burg himself, right here. Hello.
Hi, Brother Yermi. Great to be with you.
Hello. Hello. Thank you so much, Bob, for this honor and this privilege. And thank you so much for taking the time and being our first guest. This is super fun.
I'm doubly honored. Thank you.
Awesome stuff. So, Bob, let's jump right into it. Let's talk about the message of the Go Giver. What is that? What does that mean?
Well, it's simply understanding that shifting your focus, and that's where I think it really all begins, shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others. It's really understanding that doing that is not only a more fulfilling way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well. And, not for any kind of woo-woo way out there, magical, mystical type of reasons. Oh, just give and do good. No, that's really not what we're saying. It really makes a lot of rational sense, logical sense when you're that person who can take your focus off yourself and instead place it on serving others, discovering what they need, what they want, what they desire, looking for ways to help solve their challenges and problems, trying to help move them closer to happiness. Well, people feel good about you. Really, they feel great about you. They want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be in relationship with you. They want to do business with you. They certainly want to tell others all about you, or being what John David Mann and I call being your personal walking ambassadors. So that's really the what the term Go Giver is all about.
Right. And I love how you usually talk about, the go giver and the go getter and there's a lot of play on words here. Do you mind just expanding a little bit more about, the go giver versus the go
Sure.
getter?
Yeah. It's and the interesting thing is it's not really versus that because they work together. Now it always goes back to how you define terms, of course.
Sure.
So we like to say in this case, if you see a go-getter as someone who's a person of action, well, we love that. We love that because we're all in business and we all know that you can have the nicest thoughts, the greatest ideas, the best of intent, but unless action is put into the mix, nothing's going to happen. It simply cannot happen, right? So we want people to be go-getters, people of action. Now combine that with being a go-giver, someone who's absolutely, totally laser focused on bringing immense value to the lives of others, and you have a very powerful combination. So we say be a go-getter and a go-giver, just don't be a go-taker. That's the person who feels almost entitled, if you will, to take without adding value to the person, to the process, to the situation. And go takers tend to be very frustrated because they rarely attain the kind of sustainable success that they believe they should have. Now, sometimes they are successful. It's a big world. You can do things different ways, and things happen. But by and large, it's difficult for a go taker to really find a sustainable type of success, because they have to work really hard, because they have no one on their side, right? They're still adding value to people's lives, but it's almost in spite of not caring about that, because in order to have someone exchange their money for their product or service, well, they've got to provide value, but that's not where their focus is. So again, it tends to not last. And even those go takers who are able to sustain financial success, typically their personal relationships are a mess, because again, it's who they are. They're a person who's really not focused on others and making life better for others, but more about themselves. So again, it's easier to be financially and business successful as a go giver rather than a go taker, but you also need to be a go getter and take that action.
Well, yeah, and Bob, I think this is something that goes back to, after meeting you and being privileged to have you as a mentor and stuff like that. And it's one thing that stood out to me in, like, personally, was the fine line that there is between the go getter and the go taker, as you've defined it. To me, my understanding was, here I am, I have to run my business, all that kind of stuff, which is perfectly normal. That's what
Sure.
it is.
Absolutely.
But it was this idea of really, putting that other person in the forefront, give. I was very much of a giver, but there wasn't the idea of receiving. There wasn't that idea of receiving, which I'm defining the get component of also being open to receiving. Part of giving is also
Sure.
receiving, versus
Absolutely.
the taking, like the attack or the conquer or the,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, and so yeah, law number 5 is the law of receptivity, right? We
Mm,
need to be able to gratefully receive that
right.
which we have earned through the value we've provided to others. And John and I in the book use the example of the person who's breathing out but
Mm,
not breathing in. Well, it doesn't quite
sure.
work. You got to do both. You breathe
Right.
out and you breathe in, right? It's not one
Right.
or the other. You breathe out carbon
Mhm.
dioxide, you breathe in oxygen. You
Sure.
breathe out, which is giving, that giving of value. You breathe in, which is that receiving of
Mhm.
value. So, giving and receiving are two sides of the very same coin. They work together in tandem.
Sure. I'm super curious, Bob, and I don't know if you receive this question often or not, but how did you come to this message? How did you discover this whole go giver, attitude, behavior, or approach, or whatever it is?
Well, I think I was brought up with it, so I was very
Mm,
fortunate. I mean, great parents who set an example of how to live life and conduct themselves, and so I got to model something that was fantastic. Although I
mm,
wouldn't have known it or seen it at that time as being a go giver, it just was something that I always saw. Um, I think that in business, I got to see kind of the best and worst of people,
mm,
especially in sales, and you saw people do things in certain ways. And I'm one who looks for patterns. I think actually we all look
mm,
for patterns unconsciously. I tend to look for
sure.
them consciously, though, and I saw certain things, and certain people who did business in certain way seemed to have that not only sustainable success financially,
Mm,
but they also seemed to be happier, and they seemed
mhm,
to be healthier, and they seemed to enjoy themselves, and they had good friends and relationships and so forth. And so, but I think the example, I think, if there was an epiphany of sorts,
mhm,
was when I'd been in sales after I'd been in sales for a couple of years, and I was doing pretty well, and I moved to another company selling another product, and I was in a really deep slump,
mm,
couldn't seem to get out of it. And I made a young salesperson's mistake, that the more of a slump I was in, the more I was focused on myself and
mm,
making the sale, as opposed to focusing on my customers and clients and helping them, which would naturally bring me up. But I That's just not where I was at the time.
Right.
And there was a gentleman at the company where I worked. He wasn't in the sales department. I think he was an engineer. He was an older guy, didn't the kind of guy who didn't say much, but whenever he did say something, it was usually pretty profound. And
Hmm.
fortunately, he saw me as yeah, probably kind of like Joe, who I would write about
Hmm.
John David Mann 20 years later, 25 years old, whatever it was. He saw me as that young, up and coming, ambitious, aggressive sales guy type who had a lot of potential, but whose
Hmm.
focus was in the wrong place. And he asked me
Hmm.
if he could give me some advice. And I said, sure, please do. I need it. And he said, Berg, if you want to make a lot of money in selling, he said, don't have making money as your target. Your
Hmm.
target, he said, is serving others. Now, when you hit the target, he said, you'll get a reward, and that reward will come in the form of money. But
Wow.
never forget, he said, the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It's not the target itself. Your
Hmm.
target is serving others.
Hmm.
And what that really said to me was that when it came right down to it, great salesmanship uh, was never or is never about the salesperson, right?
Right.
Great salesmanship is never about the product or service, as important as those are. That's never what the sale is about. Great salesmanship is really about the other person. It's about that
Hmm.
person whose life you're trying to add value to. Or we could
Right.
even probably more accurately say it's about that person whose life is better just because you are part of it.
Hmm.
And I think when we approach sales from that foundational premise, we're really 9 steps ahead of the game in a 10-step game.
Sure. And just take me back one quick second to that day or that era or that time of when that individual gave you the advice. Without giving too much away about the books and stuff, there seems to be like a common denominator between Joe and Ben, who they sort of at first struggle a little bit with the message, or they
Mhm.
kind of like, are challenged by this message. Did you feel that at all when it was first given to you? Did you have any form of journey?
No, it's interesting that you say that. That's a great question. No, I think it caused me to realize something that I always really knew. So, like, in other words,
Okay,
it made sense to me.
right.
Whereas I think with Joe and Ben, who was the protagonist in the second story,
Mm.
the Go Giver leader, it was something that they had not grown up seeing,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And because so many people grow up with that idea, business is cutthroat. You got to be,
Mm,
it's dog eat dog. You've got to do this and you've got to step on people's toes. And so when they learn a different way, they have a hard time with it at first. It's something they resist. It's just not in their set of
mm,
beliefs. And you and I have talked before about belief systems. It's how we see the world. It has much less to
mm,
do with logic than it does with implanted beliefs that we accepted when we were young and didn't, weren't able to check premises or question things or anything.
mm,
So, but with me, because I saw, business done and I saw my parents living a life like that, where they,
mm,
always went out of their way to serve and help, it just made sense to me that that is what,
mm.
would make someone successful, despite what you saw around you sometimes.
Right, right. Yeah, and thank you so much for that answer. That really like that resonates with me because I grew up in this world of business and all that kind of stuff. But I saw it in the cutthroat kind of way. I saw it in that, dog eat dog type of way. And it just never resonated with me and it never sat well with me.
Right.
Yeah, I practiced those practices because that's how I was raised, but then it just never it wasn't fulfilling. That's what it was for me. It wasn't
Right.
fulfilling. And then after reading The Go Giver and after meeting you, that's what transformed for me.
Mhm.
It was like, there it is. That's exactly what I've been trying to say all this time. And
Thank
now
you.
it made sense. So this really, really resonates. So thank you for that answer. It
My
really
pleasure. Thank you.
is amazing, which ties into that question that I'm a strong believer that there's no one way fits all. This is how it has to be. Who do you find typically in your circles or people who are attracted to the message of the Go Giver? Who are those typical people? Who's the one that this message just resonates with? Do you find a common thread at all?
Uh, I mean, I guess it would be people who are more heart-centered, right?
Mm,
But I do think there's more of those people than people think, right? I
right.
think most people, while there are aspects certainly of human nature that's very self-interested, right? And
Mhm,
we all are, there's also elements of human nature that are others focused, which we all are also, because we want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. We want to add to the world. We want to feel as though we're part of something special.
mm,
That's why employees who work for companies, organizations who treat them as human beings instead of cogs in a
right.
machine, who are given, as professors Edward Deci and Richard Ryan, University of Rochester professors who came up with the self-determination theory of motivation, of intrinsic
Mhm,
motivation, when employees are given autonomy, are able to have mastery at what they do, competence leading
mhm,
to mastery, and relationships, right? When they
right,
feel as though they're part of something special, something bigger than themselves, that's when not only
mm,
do you have happier employees, you also have more productive and
right.
more profitable
Sure,
employees.
sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's human nature, and when we argue with human nature, it's like I think Kathy Tajanel, who's our my dear friend and business partner. Of course, you're great friends with her too.
Yeah.
She quotes Byron Katie a lot, who says, and I'm going to mess this up a little bit, but I think the message will still be, and that is, when you argue with truth, truth will win out, but only
Mhm,
100% of the time. Well, it's the same with human nature.
sure.
When you try to deny human nature, it's not you're not going to win.
Sure, sure. And I'm asking this question because I'm right now talking a lot about, the kind of relationships or the kind of transformational networking that you go to a networking event.
Mhm.
Your primary concern really should be who's that person that's in front of me? And then, that will eventually lead to, sales or whatever, which our good friend Jeff West talks a lot about, fusion
Absolutely,
points and
fusion.
stuff like that. I love that. And
Oh, he's brilliant.
it's yeah, and and I'm hearing from the other side that no, 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 I really want that person to come at me and you and I hate the word pitch, but they should pitch me right away because I want to be straight to the point. And what would be your like a response to that? Is that like is that just
It,
another way or what is that?
it's not a typically successful way of doing business, and even the person who says that, and I'm not saying they're lying or that they're wrong. There's all sorts
Right.
of people. You can never say what's
Yeah.
fair,
Right.
but even that, most of they might say that, but that's not really how it works. In
Mm,
real life, it's like the person who says, just if you're gonna critique me, give it to me straight. I want you to be brutally
right.
honest. Just tell it. Yeah, they may say that, but it doesn't usually work that way.
Right.
When you communicate and critique with tact and kindness and empathy, it typically, even to those people, it tends to
Mm,
you know
yeah. Yeah, and that's something I really wanted to highlight. So thank you for going there. Something that I could just again talk from experience and experiencing working with you was there were some tough conversations that you and I had, and it was really the tact that you brought and the empathy. And I talk a
Thank you.
lot about this. I say it's really from the heart, and I really felt it, and that's
Oh,
what helped me at least see
yeah.
my blind spot and be able to work through that. So
Oh,
it really, really ties in. So I really that's an important message to say. So my
thank
last question really is about why is this message so important that people should hear? I mean, on a deeper level, like what about this message is so important to you as an individual?
Well, the feedback I get on that, Yermi, is that it gives people permission to be themselves. We're
Mm,
we're so often taught again that you've got to be someone different,
right.
fundamentally different at work than you are at home.
Mm,
That's ludicrous. You simply cannot be one person, one place, and one person. You can do different things, handle yourself different ways, of course. Um, different environments call for different, but no, as far as being a person, it just
mm,
doesn't work. We've got to be congruent with our values all the time, no matter where we
mm,
are. right? And so what people have said to me is what the go-giver did is it gave them permission to be themselves, to be a good
Yeah.
human being, to know that it wasn't a matter of you could make a great living despite being a good person. You could make a great living because you're a good person and you're looking out for the interest of others.
Yeah. And that really ties it all up. I think about all about business is that here's the one person that you're gonna see that is the person, is the father, is the husband, this is the same person. I can't be different. This is me, this is all I got. And that's exactly what I struggled with as well. Business wasn't natural because I was told to be somebody else. And Go Giver really did that for me, was to find my voice, my way,
Oh, thank you.
which now it's fun, it's enjoyable. So thank you, Bob Burg, so much for bringing this to the light, at least for us, at least for our people. And I often say the story of how you remind me of my Baba Yosef, my grandfather Yosef, who that's something that he embodied. And I do know that he wished more of his children would be that way. Not to speak negative about anybody, but thank you for allowing me or giving me the opportunity to understanding his message and living in that legacy. So that's a big thing. That's where I draw inspiration. And just curious, where do you draw your inspiration from?
Uh, well, again, my parents certainly were my first inspiration and continue to be. My dad, who Allah Shalom, he passed away about a year and a half ago, and
Mm,
still inspires me. It's his legacy, I believe, that I carry on as I,
mm,
talk about people skills. And he was, to me, just the epitome of that person who had such a genuine, authentic interest in others, and it was just
mm.
loved wherever he went. And I've certainly never mastered that as he has, but
Wow.
boy, I try to live up to that. And of course, my mom, who just is so great and such a loving, kind mom. So I think I'm inspired by them on a daily basis. um I try to be the best that Hashem, God, would want me to be. Don't know that I necessarily live up to that, but again,
Mm,
it's an inspiration to be able to try.
sure.
So and that's what you do, and all you can
Love
do
it.
is is as closest to your best as possible. And
Yeah.
hope when you go the movie at the end, that it isn't too much where you meet that person who you could have been, and there's not too much of a differential. Although I think most of us will still see that.
Yeah. Well, Bob, from my angle, you're incredible and you're really the real deal, and I appreciate you. And there are many others who share that with me. So thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for being such an inspiration, for being the grand opening act of this show. So thank you
Thank you.
so
I
much.
appreciate that.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here. This is it. Thank you so much for tuning in. This concludes this week's episode. Thanks again to Bob Burg, and we hope to see you next week again with more incredible guests and incredible stories. So, that wraps it up. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye bye. That's it for this week's episode of the Exceptionally Irresistible Show. What has inspired you to take action in your life? Take action now. Take the first step, share it with a friend, or write it in a journal. Subscribe and share this episode, and remember, you too are exceptionally irresistible.